Oh, I didn't really think about this. Supposed to do full screen. Whoops.
That is the pain of a mother who had just discovered the horror that her daughter went through at the hands of two vile monsters who couldn't take no for an answer. Eleni Tupaldi was a beautiful young woman who had her whole future ahead of her. But in an effort to find love, she went on a date with someone she met on Facebook. But the date would turn out to be a nightmare, as the man who she thought was nice and charming was nothing but a sick predator, who, along with friends, would brutally take Eleni's life. The details of this case will make you want to scream in anger and frustration because of how the media and some members of the public tried to blame the victim for what happened to her. But let's get right into it.
In this type of situation, how do you even blame the victim? How are you supposed to know who you... Okay, you know what? Already getting agitated.
Everyone who knew and loved 21-year-old Eleni Tupaldi described her as a generous, ambitious, and kind person who had a great sense of humor. She was the daughter of two teachers, Kula and Yanis Tupaldi, and grew up in a small city in Greece with her younger brother. From a young age, Eleni had a real passion for languages. And at just 18, she spoke Arabic, German, and English, in addition to her native Greek language. She had dreams of becoming a diplomat and traveling the world, and so she worked hard to pursue that dream. Eleni did very well in school, and after graduating from high school, she enrolled at a university in the islands of Rhodes, which was a bit far from home. Despite this being the first time she was away from her family, Eleni quickly adapted to the island's way of life. And with her infectious smile and outgoing personality, she was soon making friends and going out. Everything seemed to be working out well for Eleni, and she was really enjoying the laid-back vibe of the island. And she even considered settling there after university. But her experience there would turn into a real-life nightmare. In November 2018, Eleni received a message from a 19-year-old Albanian guy named Alexander Luka. The two chatted for a while, with Alexander bragging about all the charity work that kept him busy on the island. Eleni thought he was super charming and was instantly attracted to him. And after a week of texting back and forth, the two decided to meet up in person for a date. But that would soon prove to be a terrible mistake that Eleni would come to regret. Eleni was super excited about this date. It would be her first date after a horrifying experience in 2017, where she and a friend were offered a ride by three men from a party. The men dropped off Eleni's friend safely at her home, but on the way to drop off Eleni, they made a detour and took her to a secluded place where they victimized her. These sickos, who were aged between 17 and 21 years, even recorded the horrid ordeal. And as if that's not enough, they started blackmailing her with it, saying that they'll post it on social media if she doesn't get with them. How messed up is that? Eleni, of course, refused, but she was so traumatized and distraught that she even cut her hair. She felt embarrassed and ashamed, and she couldn't even bring herself to tell her parents about what had happened. She did tell a friend who advised her to go to the police and file charges against the men. Now, this is where it gets really annoying and frustrating. Instead of the police creating a safe environment for the victims to come forward and report such cases without feeling judged, some law enforcement officers are known to make crude, victim-blaming statements that make the victims wish they had never reported in the first place. This situation is already uncomfortable enough for the victim, and often they're already blaming themselves for what happened to them. So what they're looking for is a safe space, and for someone to assure them that it's not their fault. But unfortunately, that's not what happened to Eleni. When she got to the police station, the officers were less than sympathetic.
Most people have no clue that...
Less than sympathetic. You believe that, huh? That's crazy. Oh, whoops.
Telling her that it was too late since a week had already gone by. They even told her to let it go and move on. Sick. Later, Eleni and her friends would find out that the men who had attacked her were part of a large network of predators online who would go around targeting women and recording them in their most vulnerable position and then share it amongst themselves. How disgusting is that? After a year had gone by, Eleni felt that she was ready to give love a second chance. Tragically, the man she thought would be her chance of finding love would turn out to be an even worse monster. On November 27, 2018, at 10 p.m., Alexander pulled into Eleni's apartment complex in a white truck to pick her up for their date. Surveillance footage shows him pacing back and forth in front of her apartment before she eventually came out to meet him. He gave her a hug and a kiss as they made their way to the car, and that's where she got her first surprise. Alexander wasn't alone. His friend, 20-year-old Manolis Koukuras, was sitting in the passenger seat. A little background on Manolis. He was the son of a wealthy and influential family on the island that owned almost 60% of the real estate there. The family also owned many businesses and restaurants.
Okay. And you're gonna mess it up over getting it on forcefully. And you're probably the richest person out there. And you're... Okay.
Restaurants, so they had a lot of money to throw around. Manolis was used to getting his way, and despite having multiple run-ins with the law, his family would always bail him out. So he was basically a rich, spoiled brat. It turned out that the truck that Alexander came to pick up Eleni with actually belonged to Manolis' dad. Alexander had not mentioned that he was bringing a friend on their first date, so Eleni was a bit hesitant. But Manolis introduced himself, and not wanting to appear rude, Eleni got into the truck with the two men. And then, the second surprise came. Initially, the plan was to go to a local kebab restaurant for their date, but now Alexander announced that Manolis' family had a beautiful summer house near the restaurant, and it would be more fun to go there, instead of sitting at a fast food joint. Eleni didn't want to, but she felt trapped in that situation, and thought that she had no choice but to go along with it. But she texted one of her friends saying, "Call me in an hour." That way she could have the excuse to leave without seeming rude. However, when the friend called her an hour later, the phone went unanswered. That was really weird, but the friend thought that maybe Eleni had changed her mind, or maybe she was having too much fun and had misplaced her phone. She never imagined that Eleni would be fighting for her life at that very moment. The next morning was November 28, 2018. Two fishermen who were just going about their business when they noticed something floating near a rocky area of the sea. And when they went closer to investigate, they were horrified to discover that it was a human body. Local authorities were immediately called to the scene, and they learned that the body belonged to a young woman. However, due to the state of her injuries, she could not be easily identified. The only distinguishing feature that could be used to identify her was a rose tattoo on her leg. Authorities started going around to all the little tattoo parlors on the island, hoping that someone would recognize it. And before long, someone did. And the poor young woman was identified as 21-year-old Eleni Tupaldis. Imagine receiving a call about your loved one having been brutally murdered. Eleni's family was inconsolable. They knew that she was safe at the university and never had a single moment's thought that she could be lying on the beach somewhere, dead. Who would do that to their daughter? And why? What would be their motive to hurt someone so kind and loving? The family wanted answers. So did the police. An investigation to find the monsters behind the brutal crime was underway. An autopsy showed that Eleni had not just been killed, but she had been savagely victimized before being thrown into the water to die. She had marks and wounds all over, including knife jabs and marks around her neck. Her legs had also been tied together, indicating that whoever attacked her didn't want her to survive.
You guys, look what just came. Let's try some of this on. This top?
That's like next level, like true homicide. Like it just feels like another like psycho killer that wants to like kill their dates and have like their friends tag along because they're like rich and they can get away with anything. So they're just like, oh, well, we're not normal people where we kill someone and we can't afford it. They can.
Investigators were able to obtain surveillance footage outside Eleni's home, and before long, they had their suspects in custody. As you'd expect, Manolis denied any involvement in Eleni's murder, but his friend Alexander was quick to confess. But he tried to minimize his participation in the murder, blaming his friend Manolis for most of what happened. He claimed that after getting into the summer house that night, he and Manolis started making advances on Eleni, asking her to get intimate with both of them, but bluntly refused. According to Alexander, Manolis could not take the rejection, and he became violent towards Eleni, attacking her with their fists and an electric iron. Scared and confused, Eleni threatened to go to the police, hoping that the men would get scared and leave her alone. But Manolis took this as provocation and decided to get rid of her. Alexander claimed that he tried to stop his friend, but Manolis was set on hurting the young woman. But Eleni did not go down easy. She bravely fought off her attackers and attempted to escape, but she was sadly overpowered. While semi-conscious, the two sickos drove her to the beach and victimized her, before tying her legs and throwing her into the ocean, just because she said no. Heartbreakingly, Eleni was still alive when she went overboard, and she reportedly begged them to take her to the hospital, promising that she wouldn't say anything to anyone if they let her live. But these two heartless monsters were determined to get rid of her. Her last words were, reportedly, "My dad will come after you both." Investigators were shocked by Alexander's calmness as he described the horrific and callous way they treated Eleni. One officer would say it was as if he was telling a simple story. Alexander would also tell investigators the location where they disposed of Eleni's clothes and belongings, along with other evidence. Although the two had tried to clean up the crime scene, investigators would still find DNA evidence in the entire house and in the Manolis' father's truck. With his mom and Boyer present, Manoli would also tell his version of the story, blaming Alexander for everything that happened. Both men were arrested and charged with the murder of Eleni. The news of Eleni's gruesome murder shook the entire nation of Greece, with many struggling to understand how two young men could be capable of doing something so heinous and evil. But there was a big difference in how the media portrayed the two suspects. Alexander, being an Albanian immigrant with no money, was painted as the villain in the entire case, while Manoli was the helpless, poor rich kid from a good family who watched helplessly as Eleni was being attacked. And social media was even more insane. Some people were saying horrible things about Eleni, blaming her for what happened to her, and saying that she kind of deserved it. They portrayed her as an unstable and easy girl and used her first...
Easy. They're as bad as the people that freaking committed the crime. Like, easy. Okay, boy.
First horrifying experience to say that she should have known better. What kind of sick reasoning is that? Needless to say,
okay, because you're definitely gonna know what type of person's capable of doing. I forgot what I was gonna say. I'm so triggered. They're basically calling her easy and then letting her traumatic experience ruin this moment. Like saying, oh, agree. But even if she agreed, this would still would happen. 10 times worse than this.
This was really devastating for her family, who did not even know about her ordeal in 2017. Meanwhile, the two suspects showed zero remorse for their actions and acted like what they did was not a big deal. They were seen laughing and flipping off the cameras, behaving like this was all a big joke to them. It was later revealed that Alexander had a long history of crimes against women, including one where he and another man victimized a 19-year-old handicapped girl just 4 days after.
Oh, now you definitely going to hell. A handicapped girl? No. I literally have nothing else to say. It's not a surprise because obviously they're portraying this guy as the spoiled rich guy that gets away with anything. Clearly, it says it right now.
After killing Eleni. It was also discovered that one of the 3 men who had attacked Eleni in 2017 was actually a friend of Alexandra. As for Manolis, he also had several cases of attacking young girls and women, and was even expelled from several schools due to his violent behavior. However, his parents defended him, using their money and resources to get him out of paying for his mistakes. Now, the trial started on January.
Here's one thing you need to do.
And I'm gonna say it again, no amount of money is gonna pay for what you do to people. It will always come back to bite your ass. Money is not gonna solve anything.
Before buying anything online. Don't spend another dime on Amazon until you watch this first.
January 13th, 2020, and Manoli's parents hired the best defense lawyers to get their son acquitted of the crime, and things would get really insane and wild from here. The defense was ready to do anything to defend their client, to the point of even asking that no women be part of the jury, as they couldn't be impartial in this type of case, according to them. The prosecutor, who was a woman, also faced numerous pressure and threats. One night, she was even attacked while going home, but she didn't let any of that intimidate her and stop her from seeking justice for Eleni. The defense tried to put all of the blame on Alexander, portraying him as the predator who had corrupted the son of a well-meaning and influential family. They painted Manolis as a naive victim who didn't know any better and was easily influenced. Manolis' parents had even gone as far as paying a doctor to prescribe antidepressants to Manolis to make him seem more vulnerable. But during the trial, 2 women came in and testified that Alexander and Manolis had victimized them as well. The prosecutor gave a powerful speech about gender-based violence, in which she talked about the culture of victim blaming and condemned everyone who had been defaming the victim. She said that even if Eleni had had a consensual relationship with Alexander in the past, it was wrong to force her that night against her consent. In her speech, she addressed not just the 2 criminals, but their parents and society, who created such monsters by enabling their behaviors all these years. The trial proceedings went on for over 2 years, but finally, the 2 were found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. But while this might sound like a win, in Greece, life in prison could mean 10 years. Fortunately, they were also given a further 15 years of the assault charges. This means that they'll have to stay in prison for 25 years before they're eligible for parole. A leaked video has shown the 2 predators getting a taste of their own medicine in prison. If you ask me, that's poetic justice. What?
Are they getting beat up? Or are they gonna get killed? But anywho, that's karma for you. Anyways, if you enjoyed this, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll watch more if you guys like it.